It was during when COVID was going on. I had remembered this church, and I thought, you know what? I wonder what they're doing over there. I bet they got a room there or something. And so this is where the brides used to. The room I'm in is where the brides used to change before getting married. So it's a cool room. It's right above the chapel. The chapel's right below me.
Is it an active church?
It's active. Yeah. You bet. And then what else is cool, too, is they do a Sunday service here, but then they also rent the space out to monks during the week. So there's just chanting, just like heavy chanting and incense just coming up all day long. It's pretty wild.
Why did you seek out a church specifically?
Well, it was just I knew the building was here, and I liked the building. And so I just figured I'm just going to go and check it. I didn't even know for sure if they'd even have a place. And of course, there was no one here, and they were hard to get a hold of. And then I got a call, and then when they told me what the office rent was, it's air conditioned and heated with the electricity's paid and the Wi-Fi's here and everything. And they told me what the donation. It's a donation. What the donation is, and I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. You got any bigger ones? if that's what they're going for, I'll take the whole floor. Give me the whole top floor.
They're actually renting space out. You think it's a direct result of the pandemic?
No, I don't know. I shot a movie in here. I shot a movie in this church. I rented out a big office. I directed the TSOL movie Ignore Heroes. And so I rented out one of their larger office space rooms and brought carpenters in and basically had a set built inside the office. And they were totally cool with it. They're like, what do you do? I go, well, I just want to shoot a movie. I'm going to bring some carpenters in. I'm not going to touch any of the walls. It's going to be built within. And they were stoked. The Reverend was up here checking it out, and they just...
Is it a pretty progressive church then?
Yeah, it's pretty progressive. I think the most crucifixes in this building are in my office. Yeah, they're pretty. It's like a center for spiritual living or whatever it is. They're pretty open-minded here. They're pretty open-minded. I think more of it's a lot about positivity and, so. I mean, there's no religious rite down there praying over me when I walk into the office. You know what I'm saying? They're pretty open. Actually, I had a lady I was speaking to outside. She had joined the Peace Corps in 1962 or something early, and she was telling me all about her experiences straight out of high school and going in the Peace Corps. And that was, she's old. This lady's, she's, in her 90s or whatever, 80s.
I recently started doing some volunteer work at a food pantry in my neighborhood, and one of the things that I really appreciate about it that I didn't expect is it's just almost like forced interaction with people that you wouldn't necessarily normally interact with on a day to day.
Yeah, that's interesting. See, I'm an interactor. My girl always says, God, who the hell are you talking to over there? What do you got? Because I'm always stopping and visiting. My girl has lived on the same street forever, and she doesn't know any of her neighbors. And now, I've been staying with her, and now neighbors are stopping by to say hi. She's like, "What are you talking to all these people?" Because I like going around visiting and chatting up with people. I like people fascinate me. I love the stories. I love listening to people. It's just fascinating. I'm not very good at making solid connections. I've had trouble with that since I was a kid, but I'm good at I like listening. I like hearing their stories and seeing them.
What's your sense of the disconnect between the two? Obviously, you're good at engaging with people. Why doesn't that get to the next level?
You could sit there and talk about, childhood abuse issues and that kind of thing. And, I directed a film. The first film I directed was a short, and it's called 288. And it's about survivors of child abuse, male survivors of physical and sexual abuse. So anyway, and maybe that's got something to do with it. Who knows? Whatever it is, but it's just that exactly what you said, a disconnect. but I enjoy seeing it. I like talking to people. So, but it just, anyway.
Based on the books you've written, based on the music you put out in the world, the conversations that you have, the movie that you just, the TSOL movie that you just mentioned, you're not afraid sharing very deep and intimate things about yourself.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't seem to bother me, but I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm capable of just separating me from me, if that's it. Like, it's almost like there's me, and then there's the person that has done these things that has no connection to me whatsoever. Yeah, so my girlfriend, I'll tell you, my girlfriend's a therapist, right? So it's funny because I've been married a couple times and just, whatever, nightmare. But this is a good one because one day I was just totally freaking out over whatever issue was going on and, just losing it. And I go, nobody likes this. Nobody likes this. And she goes, look, I like it. She goes, because every time I come over here, I never know who's going to answer the door. So she's like, I mean, whatever.
It's a good quality to have in somebody in your life. Like, therapists tend to be very patient with you.
Yeah, that's what I like. Like, when I'm totally losing it, God, what did I say? I said something today crazy. She goes, oh, okay. It was something just, whatever thought it was, whatever thought I was rolling on, I'm going to pack everything up. I'm moving. I'm taking off. I'm going to, blah, blah, blah. She goes, oh, okay. That's all right.
That's the quality that a good therapist has that I don't possess, is the ability to listen to something and then not immediately judge it.
Right. See, I want to judge. I want to tear it apart. I want to solve it. I don't want to wait and let them solve it. I don't want to sit back and let them come to their own conclusions, which is really what it takes. And, it's like I always, hey, let's look, let's fix this. Let's solve this. Let's get to this. This is the issue. So, but yeah, my girl is way better at it. She sits back. She lets people come to, I just tell her, sometimes I tell her, look, I can't even listen to this shit. You can't tell me what's going on because it frustrates me like crazy. Just give them their answers. Give them the answers. Move on. But it doesn't work like that.
It's a balancing act because I started seeing a therapist during the pandemic, as probably like a lot of other people did. I hit that wall, and I'm definitely a goals-oriented person, and that's actually part of the reason why I recently changed therapists, is because I just felt like we were just talking in circles. It's great having somebody to talk to. This is nice and all, but I actually want to feel like when I look back on these sessions, like I've gotten something out of them.
Right. Or have an exit plan. That's the one thing I have a buddy that does, and he just gets he gets students. He goes, look, all it's really about is me dumping anyway. So I just hire these students. This guy's a, he's a big producer, whatever the hell. It doesn't matter what he does. I'm just saying. So he goes and gets kids that are in college, and he just sits down and just basically just pukes for an hour and then says thank you and walks out. That's what he uses it for. Just somebody to just listen to his crap for an hour, and then he walks out. Now, for me, I always want an exit plan. It's like, look, how long am I going to be visiting with you? When can we see some results? Why don't you just tell me how to fix this? Just fix it, and then I'm going to move on. But that doesn't work that way.
Yes and no, because, you strike me as somebody who has made a lot of personal progress over the decades.
Well, I think, yeah, yes. But I think a lot of it has been, I got sober 35 years ago. So a lot of it was been, for me, just waking up. Like just the fact that I can see what I'm doing, see how I treated people, see how I was acting. And when you have that awareness, you see it's like, oh, okay, I'm done. I'm not doing that anymore. It's like a crumb on your lip at dinner. Somebody says, hey, you got, and you just get it off and you're done, but you got to see it first. So a lot of that is just me seeing it and just saying, yeah, I'm going to repair this damage. I'm bad news. Don't like it.
Repairing damage is a good way of putting it. And I know that you wrote a book on the recovery process. I think specifically the 12-step process. how do you think your approach to it was different than sort of the more conventional approach to 12-step?
Well, I think what's interesting to me is interesting. The conventional approach is think for yourself. Nobody's in charge. No bosses. Everything can be done a different way. There's no right way of doing things. There's a 12-step framework, but within that framework, multitude of ways to do things. Now, that's the original intent of that program. Now, as the years went on, people started getting controlling, and you get guys saying, well, let me tell you what to do here. Now, this is the way we're going to do it. This is how recovery works, blah, 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 blah. And so these days, that sounds fundamental, but it's not. So basically, I go back to the beginning of it and say, look, I'm not God. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you're supposed to do. I don't know what, it's like I'm not going to give you any advice. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to share with you what I did. Here's how I got out of this. This is how I clean this up. This is how I take this on the road. Nobody's in charge of me. I was taught early on, a lot of people come into recovery, and they're looking for a mommy or a daddy. They're looking for a boss, somebody to tell them what to do, a quick answer or whatever. And when I came in, I was taught that, hey, time to grow up. Grow up. You're your own boss, but if you're your own boss, you better be taking care of some business, and learn how to be responsible, learn how to grow up. So basically in the recovery book I wrote, I talk about that. Hey, here's how I did this. Here's how I grew up. Here's how I worked this deal. And so it's really, I'm a fundamentalist, but compared to a lot of recovery today, it seems like it's heresy, but it's really not. Especially
interesting in the context of me talking to you from a church. Obviously, the whole higher power thing is something that a lot of people talk about around this. Is there a sense in which that is seeking that authority figure?
Well, what's funny is I'm an agnostic. So I'm an agnostic who has an office in a church. You can't, it's like.
I've not been through the program myself, but that it can be anything that you choose to sort of invest in.
Yeah. I mean, there are things to think about. It needs to be, well, that's hard. It's a little hard to explain. I laugh sometimes. I would hear some people say, well, make your higher power a doorknob. And then somebody would say, oh, that's ridiculous. But if you look at a doorknob as a symbol, as a tool to bridge the way into another room, well, that's legitimate. That's a legitimate way to look at things. So for me, I keep it right here, right on this secular level. And if I'm studying any sort of scripture or do any readings or whatever, I just apply it to how can I be a better servant? How can I be kind to the people around me? How can I be more loving, more giving, more helpful? So everything I read basically just applies to that. I have no idea if there is a God, what God looks like, what it is. I don't have the vanity to say that I know what God is. So I just use those things just to be a better dad, a better friend, a better bandmate, a better whatever it is, to just try. I put a tax on the world and everyone around me for so long that I'm basically just paying that back.
I was reading an interview that you did and paraphrase you, but this is a little while ago now, but I guess probably about 10 years ago doing the math. You said, I've spent the last 24 years since I was 26 years old paying back what I did.
Right.
What does it mean to pay back?
Well, I don't necessarily know. I mean, sometimes it is just literally paying back what you took, paying back. I consider taking power. That's also taking power from people. Returning that which was stolen, returning that power to them. Or I know that's kind of a weird concept a little bit, but basically, some of it's been cash. Some of it's been just owning up to what I've done. Some of it's just like repairing wounds, basically, making amendments, repairing wounds. That's what it is, and not creating anymore. Trying to be helpful. It's like that's my goal now. Is just constantly be helpful to people. And sometimes just be kind. Just to be kind, to be nice, just a smile, a hello. I just finished a short film, and it's called Good Morning, and that's what it's called, and it's about one word. The whole dialogue is good morning. That's it. It's the whole word, and it's about a man who. It starts with him up in an old apartment. He's kind of run down or whatever. He's there, and you see pictures of his wife and his kids, and he gets himself dressed up, fixed up, and he walks outside, and he gets a little way down the street, and somebody says good morning to him, and he turns around and he goes back. And this plays out throughout the days, and sometimes he gets a little further before someone says good morning to him, and then he always stops and turns around, and then on the last day, they never say it. And he walks to a bridge and just jumps. And that was it. That good morning, that one kind word was the only thing that was keeping him here.
I'm of a few minds of this because there are certain ways in which punk has historically been very earnest, but also I think that there is this compulsion to view everything with an ironic lens for some people, and to not be too earnest for fear of appearing to be, corny or cheesy. Is that something that you had previously sort of fought against, being too earnest?
Well, I still fight against it now. But it is.
That short film that's a very earnest subject.
Right. But, and saying it with, a little humor, a little shit talking, a little, it's just like, lighten up, man. It's okay. Here's the goal, but let's not take ourselves too seriously. Let's not get preachy. Let's not get, you're not going to catch me giving sermons anywhere. I'm a firm believer of people's lives are their own to live. It's none of my business what anyone else does. I just, I try to take things lightly and kind of fool around a little bit and big talk. That's what me and a friend, that's just big talk. You're doing big talk right now. And just, go easy with it. I mean, oh my God, I hated those bands that would get too preachy and too, like to me, there's something about me that just makes me want to rebel immediately when somebody starts acting like that. Even if I believe, what they're saying, I still just,
Just the other week, last week, I was talking specifically to my therapist about this, I was talking a little bit about my professional career, and I told her, I'm sometimes worried that maybe I'm not in the place where I would like to be, or I'm not, moving up the way I would like to because I tend to be too jokey. And maybe when you make too many jokes, like people have difficulty taking you seriously. But for me, and I think this is probably something you can deeply relate to, but for me, my entire life, like having a sense of humor and being able to tell jokes is almost this shortcut that I found to just cut to the quick and to just immediately connect with people.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also the thought of do people really take you seriously when you're talking so much like that? You're making a lot of jokes and screwing around a little bit. But yeah, humor. I that's funny you say that because I connected with a guy today like that. That he was a little tight. I was trying to take my motorcycle over to the shop to get it repaired, and I had to call people up to get a jump. Whatever the hell it was. And the guy showed up, and he's kind of real stiff, real tight or whatever. And he goes to put some gas inside the tank, and he starts putting it in. I go, that's diesel, right? And he's like, well, what? He stops, and then he goes, oh, you got me. You got me. You got me. And then he started laughing. And then it just opened up a whole situation. The guy ended up hanging out. We're having a cold drink together, and just talking about whatever, but it with that little bit of humor, that little bit of lightheartedness, that but sometimes it's funny. I'll be out screwing around, and sometimes I'll do that. I'll smart ass somebody. I'll say something, and sometimes they don't buy it. It's not funny. They're not okay with it, And my kids always laugh at me. They go, "Shit." that didn't go over well. And then my daughters laugh about that.
I once had a teacher tell me, and this like this genuinely changed my life to a certain extent. She said, Brian, not everybody gets your sense of humor. And I took that to heart, just like you can't assume immediately that people are going to kind of be on your wavelength and understand where you're coming from.
Right. Feel out the crowd, read the room. Sometimes I'm not good at reading the room. I'll tell you, that's funny you say that. I'll tell you what a professor once said to me, that hook. Sometimes teachers, professors, whoever, they say something. I know what mine was. I was screwing around. Not taking stuff seriously, screwing around. I was attempting to go back to school, whatever it is, little college. I roll in. There's like a quiz, like a little thing that morning. She wants to just see where we're at or whatever. So I just grabbed the book and just blew through it really fast. And I took it and I was done in a second and I sat it down and, I walked out. I took off, right? And I came back and the next session, she walks in and she said, you didn't study this material whatsoever, did you? And I go, no. She goes, well, you aced that test. And I kind of smile, like kind of a little cocky kind of smile. And she goes, and you have no idea how sad that is. And then just walked away from me. And it's like that little line, made me think so much how sad that is. What a lack of effort I have put into things and, how I didn't take things seriously and how, that intellect or whatever gets me here, but where could it have gone? What it could have served, and I chose not. And that stayed with me. Shit, it's been 20-something years. Well, it's been longer than that. It's been 30-something years later. I'm still thinking about it.
That specifically is an interesting lesson, though, because like at the end of the day, you could have studied more and you wouldn't have done any better than you ultimately did on the test.
Right. Exactly. But I've looked at my life completely like that, just blowing through. It is. I wouldn't have done any better on the test than I did. But that's how I've looked at everything. Just this kind of like, I'm just going to skate in here. I'm just going to do this. I'm not going to, there's no real care put to a lot of things.
You're referring specifically to the relationships in your life, the art that you make, everything?
And of course, like I said, this is close to 30 years ago. There's a big difference between the way I look at things now and then. But a lot of it was that, just skate through. And just really no awareness, a lack of awareness. I'm not very astute when it comes to anything, basically. I just wander around until somebody stops me and says, hey, hang on a minute. Have you ever looked at it this way? Have you ever thought of doing this? Have you ever tried to write a book? Have you ever really looked at what someone else wrote and how they wrote it and what went into it? Or you just take everything like this. So it really started making me see in art or whatever, music, literature, whatever it was, the amount of work it goes in and the style and the way people are. It just made me just stop for a minute, focus.
To a certain extent, though, I mean, we all require some sort of external stimulation, especially if we're going to change course, but the key to it is being open to that. The key to it is, and I find this incredibly difficult in my own life, is accepting criticism as being genuine and being from a good place.
Well, and that's the other thing, like critique. That was something I never wanted, nor am I going to listen to you. And it's funny that I hunger for it now. Now, not necessarily during the project. When I was working on the TSOL film, the Ignore Heroes film, I wouldn't take anyone's advice. I wouldn't listen to anything said to me. If you ever deal in the film world, it's so crazy. No other art in the world is like this, where you can be in the middle of a project and somebody go, well, let me give you my notes on that. Let me tell you what I think. It's like, wait a minute, man. I'm just breaking out the palette. I don't need your notes. I mean, could you imagine that in art? If somebody, stopped, Jackson Pollock said, no, hang on a minute. Before you lay down that orange, let me tell you what I think about orange. It's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like there are instances of that, and I want to say like the Sistine Chapel of Michelangelo receiving feedback as he was doing it, and it never. If you interrupt the artistic process, it never ends well.
No, but in film, they take that's accepted. Everyone looking for their notes, their take on this thing or whatever, and for me, I'm not a fan of it. It's like, hey, let me do my work, but then I want to hear what you say after I do my work. Then I'm really I want to listen to your critique. Give me where do you come from? What's your experience? Give me what you think of this. Something I could look at. And now it's at my age now or whatever I'm doing, I hunger for a critique. Honest, hard, challenging questions about all of it. That's how I learn. I need it.
I mean, as long as the person giving you feedback is genuine, I'm sure there are instances, music, being in the studio, for example, where it's useful to have people to bounce ideas off of. Yeah,
yes and no. I made this.
We're getting to the heart of it now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right. There's was in this band called the Joy Killer, and one of our records, Joy Killer 3. I got the whole band together in the studio before we laid down one note, and I said, I just want to pre-apologize for what I'm going to do to you, because I knew where that was going, because I had heard it in my head, and I heard it, and I knew where it needed to go, and I basically just beat them up. I beat them all up, and I mean, one of the parts was, I'll tell you, it was funny. The guitars in this one section and this song were out of tune with the piano. The song's called Ordinary, and the guitars were out of tune from the keyboards. So the producer and I were listening back. We said, hey, let's just mute those guitars here, because they're not working right now. So let's just mute them so we don't got to listen to that. And the minute we hit the mute button, this big, large chorus turned into this small, intimate chorus with larger verses, because the guitars were now gone. And I thought, oh my God, there it is right there. We don't need those guitars. Those guitars are out. And the guitarist just went crazy. He just went, he went ballistic, but I still believe it was the right move. It was the right move. So
the fact that you're able to distinguish that specific instance leads me to believe that it's at least like somewhat of an anomaly in your career to be like that, to that micromanagey or that hyperfixated or that closed off to suggestion.
Well, yeah, Yes and no. On the last TSOL record we did, our keyboard player Greg Keane said, "Hey, we need you to be you. So don't start playing soft now. We need you to be you. You may not like it, because sometimes I don't like it when I get that way. It doesn't feel good, when you're coming hard like that and just hey, this is the way we're going to do it. We're going to do it." It doesn't necessarily feel good to me, but sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes it takes somebody doing that, and so our keyboardist, he just came to me, he said, look, I know you don't like it, but, you got to be you. You got to be you on this, man. Don't pussyfoot this. Just, we trust you, so be you.
You, and when I say you, I mean you specifically. There's, I think in a certain sense that not caring about criticism has been almost a superpower for you over the years. That it's allowed you to go in all these different directions because you're not seeking people's approval.
Well, that's the bottom line, isn't it? Who are you making films for? Who are you writing books for? Who are you making? That was the one thing I learned a lot, is because there was a time period where I was basically trying to sell myself because I was broke, man. I'm living at my mom's house. I don't have anything. I just, I was broke. And so I was just slowly peeling away parts of myself. Somebody would suggest something, I'd do it. The record label at the time, working with a major record label, and, they'd say, oh, we want this. And I'm giving it, and I'm giving it, and I'm giving it. And then Hunt Sales, who played with, Iggy Pop and Bowie and the drummer Hunt, Hunt told me one time, he said, Jack, you've been playing hardball your whole life. Don't start playing softball now. and basically he was right. I play hardball. That's what I do. I play hardball. But the stuff that I create isn't necessarily financially lucrative. It's not. It's like it. So sometimes just sticking to your guns is kind of a little bit of a, it's a bitch. When you can't come up with a bill, you're homeless again at 50 something years old or whatever, and you may have integrity, but integrity doesn't pay the bills. I'll tell you a funny story. I was on a panel at a publisher's luncheon, and it was me and one of the guys from Toto and a guy from Smash Mouth, and it was like whatever. So in this nice luncheon, and anyway, so one of the publishers stood up and they said, "Well, Jack, is it strange for you? You're the only one at the table there that's not a multi-million seller." And the guy from Toto said, "Yeah, he's also the only one with any credibility." So I thought that was we were all laughing. It was pretty funny.
Credibility doesn't always pay the bills. So that period for you, that would have been around like 2005?
Oh, shoot. It's been on and off all through. On and off all through.
I bring that up specifically because, again, like, I don't know if I was reading or listening to an interview that you did, but you specifically mentioned sleeping in a car, and you mentioned that in the year 2005.
Well, how about 2024? I just lost my apartment. I just lost.
But you're dating a therapist, so you're that's definitely a step up from the car.
Yeah. Well, finance your own film. That's a good way to lose an apartment. That's film school. Do Kickstarter and take out loans and do whatever to finance a film, and it's basically. You take a beating from that too. So, but I don't mind. I'm staying at my girl's house now. All my stuff's in storage. I'm staying at my girl's house. My daughters are dividing up anything that's good. And I have my office. But I'll tell you a funny story. One time I was giving a talk somewhere, and I was homeless at the time. I mean, I was literally living out of a car. All my stuff was in a car, and so they were introducing the speaker, who was me that night. And they said, "Well, our speaker tonight's from," he looks at me, the guy looks at me and smiles, and goes, "Well, I think he's from our parking lot this evening." And it was pretty funny to go up and, you go up and give, and I thought it was amusing. I was laughing, and you're going up to give a talk on spirituality or whatever, and, you're living out of a car.
Yeah, but that's exactly the time that people need spirituality, is when they're at their lowest.
That's right. It's a lot. But here's what's interesting. People always, they're looking for books, how to get what you want and be happy. Nobody wants to read a book, how to not get what you want and still be happy. That's not really.
How to enjoy living out of your car is probably not.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not as easy a sell.
At the time, what did spirituality mean to you? A
connection to those around me. That's all it was. I mean, there's that great John Donne thing. No man is an island. We're all promontories, and each man's death diminishes me. I think he was speaking about England, but anyway, it's the connection. I'm one of those idiots always likes to put something together. I love Charles Dickens when he's writing A Christmas Carol, and the speech that Marley gives, and he says, "Mankind was my business. The common good was my business." This is the spirit. Anything outside of me, the awareness that somebody exists other than me. I think there's a funny scene in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson, and he's playing cards with the guys. And Danny DeVito's character, Mancini, comes up and he starts talking to him. And Jack Nicholson says, hey, hang on a minute. These are real people here. These are real people. And, that he was, of course, he's mentally ill. His character is mentally ill in that, but so self-absorbed, so self-centered that no one exists besides his needs. And on the extreme, you can watch people. They'll walk in front of people when they're talking. They'll walk into a conversation and just start speaking as if no one there exists other than them. So it's, it's awareness of the people around you. And then lately I've been on this thing lately where self-absorption almost seems to be the price for awareness. I was less self-absorbed before I was aware because I was just operating and never checking myself. Then all of a sudden I come into this awareness like, oh my God, what are you doing here? 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 And, you got a little more self-absorption, I guess, because you're really constantly checking yourself and making sure.
There's a certain extent to which you would think that awareness generally would almost be the opposite of that, because awareness also means being aware of other people and their needs.
Right.
So that runs counter to self-absorption too.
It does, doesn't it? That's not the case. Because even the awareness that, hey, all right, what's happening here? What's going on? What is he saying to me? What is my part here in this conversation? It's that constantly wondering, where do I fit? Where do I stand? There's a great line about humility, and in the line it says that humility is just an honest appraisal of where I stand between God and my fellows. So I think when you're aware, you're constantly checking that, bouncing off, ping, 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 ping. What's happening? What are you doing? Are you stepping over the line here? So there is some self-absorption of that. It's kind of a bit of a joke to say that, but it's also, there's a bit of truth in every joke also.
One piece of internet culture, one phrase from internet culture that I've really come to appreciate is, have you heard NPC before?
In a game?
Non-playable character? Yeah. Which is such a beautiful idea when you apply that to the real world, because that's how most people are going through life, right? Most people are going through life as the star of their own video game, and everybody else are just these dialogue characters.
Well, exactly. That's in the awareness that, hey, you're not. These are people. They have their own lives, their own. That's why I always stop. Like if I call somebody, I always say, hey, am I intruding in this call? Are you doing something? I don't think you're sitting around waiting for me to just call you, just talk to you or whatever. I've
had that experience though in life where obviously you implicitly know that that's the fact, but then you'll run into somebody you hadn't seen for years, and you're almost your system is shocked by the fact that their life continued on.
Without you. Well, that's funny that, so in TSOL, my band TSOL, I quit for a while and I was mad at them that they continued to use the name. So I was pissed at them. It's like, God, look at all the damage. Look what they've done, blah, blah, blah. And I was talking, I wish this guy was still around. You would have loved this guy. My friend Alan Rosencrantz, this great old guy. He was a gangster guy that had gotten straightened up, and he's lost a leg, his leg's missing, just like a character out of a movie. And he said to me one time, he goes, Jack, so tell me how this went down. I understand you're very angry. Now, when did they kick you out of the band? When were you kicked out of that band? I go, kicked out? I wasn't kicked out. I quit, man. I walked away. He goes, whoa. Now, wait a minute. You walked away, left them stranded, and you're angry because they tried to continue their livelihood without you? Is that what you're upset about? I'm like, oh, wait a minute, man. I never looked at it like that,
It just knocks you on your ass when somebody is able to put things into context like that.
Exactly. Coming from outside like that, and I said, yeah, I guess not. I mean, looking at it like that, yeah.
At the same time, I understand that from the standpoint of, let's say you break up with somebody, but you still like the person, you still got somewhat a relationship with them. You theoretically want them to succeed, but part of you is like, yeah, a little bit of like schadenfreude isn't the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm friends with all my exes, all my ex-wives, except for the one that died. I literally want the best for them. I want them to be happy. I want it. I want them to be. If there was anything I could ever do for any of them, I would do it. I'd do it right now. Whatever I could do, I would give to them. So,
Yeah, I guess the part of it that I saw, I'm also, friendly with just about all my exes, and part of it is like, I just want them to miss me every once in a while. I'm not saying I want them back. I don't want to be in a relationship. I understand why it ended. I just, from time to time, I want them to miss me.
Right. Think fondly of me. Yes. That's funny. So one of the first films I directed was a short film called 288 about child abuse. And it all started because I wrote a sort of love letter, basically, to the person that had abused me. And it starts with, I wonder if you remember me. I wonder if you fondly recall the times you touched me. So, and it was like, it was that thought of thinking, hey, does this person miss me? Do they care about me? Did they see me as more than just some physical thing? Could they see any amount of person in me? And basically that started me on a whole film about child abuse and a monologue at the end about whether that person misses me or not.
That's a deeply complex thought that I can't even begin to attempt to unpack.
It was for me, too. It was a lot unpacking. It was like, hey, man, it's, very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. But it was a thought. It was a thought. It's like, I wonder if this person thinks of me the way I think of a person, the way I think of a relationship or whatever. What was I to this person? I mean, was I literally nothing? Literally nothing. Nothing more than a towel, a whatever it was, whatever, nothing, an inanimate object. Or do you think back to my spirit? Do you think back to what I was, who I was?
Do you have more perspective on that than you did at the time?
I don't know if I do or not. I think after I created that film, if you get a chance, you go. It's free. It's on Vimeo. You can look it up. 288, and it was a difficult piece, and also the thing about that film is I employed a technique that had never, as far as I can tell from everyone I talked to, it's never been used before in film. So basically, no one who was in that film knew what the film was about, except for me. I was. Some guy shot a small documentary on me, and I went to a film festival, and I was watching the films in the film festival, and I was thinking, some of these are written so well, but the acting is so poor. And sometimes you stumble on great actors, but you're not getting, if you're making small little films, the acting's not great most times. So what I did is I thought, I'm not going to tell any of these people. Okay, here's how the whole thing even started. If you know, I made a comment on social media one morning, some silly comment about, I can't start my day without a cup of hot coffee in the morning. Whatever, just noxious little comment. And then people started commenting on it, and I need it black, I need it hot, I need it blah, 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 this kind of thing. Then I went back and I deleted the original post and rewrote the post of a sexual nature. And then their coffee comments all seemed to be applying to that post. And then people started coming in later and going, what the hell's with these comments, man? Who are these people? Going. So I thought, okay. So then when I went and wrote this movie, this 288 movie, when I wrote it, I got actors. They weren't even actors. They're just friends. These were just people I knew. These guys I knew said, hey, I'm making this film. Do you want to do it? They said, yeah. So I came over and I asked them questions. I was seeking honest answers. So I would ask them, have you ever been betrayed before? Has a friend ever hurt you? What did it feel like? So they're not acting. They're giving me legitimate answers to that question. Hey, I didn't see it coming. Hey, it hurt, man. I was heartbroken, man. This guy was close to me. It was like a father figure, blah, blah, blah. So here were these answers. Then I took those answers and basically cut them, took them, and then applied them to sexual abuse and physical abuse. And so they're giving me honest answers to a question that wasn't asked of them. And it's gnarly. I sat the first film festival that it showed in, I sat in a theater and just listened to people sob. And then the perpetrator that's in the film, I told him to talk to me. He was a veteran. He served in Vietnam, and I told him to talk to me about entitlement, like people being entitlement, and kids these days, and whether they have any. And he was saying things like they need to stand on their own 2 feet. They got to quit crying. They blame everybody for their problems. Why are they looking to me? I'm not the problem here. They're the problem. And so in the film, you hear those that were abused, and then you hear the abuser denying the abuse and attacking them for what they said and how they're making things up. And when you put the two together, it was extremely uncomfortable. And then at the end, it's a monologue of my letter.
Do you think that the project is more powerful if people have the foreknowledge of what you did, or just coming in cold?
Well, sometimes they get mad when they find out what I did, because it's so but I'm talking to you because who knows if we'll ever get a chance to speak on this again. But
yeah,
a lot of times they're mad because it's like, what do you mean? There's no unicorn. There's no, it's like they've been shown this thing and they believe it's real, and now they're told, hey, this is not real. But the interesting thing is, out of the people that were in the film, a few of them actually turned out where they came to me and said, hey, I was molested. I was hurt like this. And there was only one of the participants that refused to go on with the film. They wanted to be pulled out of it. They didn't want to be part of it, even though it says that they're actors at the start.
When was it revealed to them what the project was, and when did they pull out?
When it was the end. When it was done. After it had been... one of them kind of had an idea. I don't even think he didn't know what the project was, but I think the questions were becoming very uncomfortable to him. So I think that even though that's not what I was asking him, I think that those answers in his responses that I was looking for were touching what had happened to him. If that makes sense, yeah.
It's an interesting approach for a number of reasons, one of which is I wonder if you just had the sense before going into it that it was just such a hard topic to talk about that maybe you wouldn't get people to really discuss it in that honest and earnest way.
Well, and definitely not the people that were in that film. Not that demographic or whatever it is. You don't get a lot of like tough guys coming out saying they had been raped or molested, whatever it is. It's just not it's not talked about. It's not talked about. They don't realize that a lot of these victims are not what they think victims look like.
What gave you that courage initially to talk about it?
Once again, for me, it's disconnection. It's probably, I think that the act itself, what happened to me, created my ability to not let it bother me, because you're so separated from that sense of self. You're gone. I heard this woman, really interesting. I really enjoyed it. Nicholas Ray, who was a director, he did Rebel Without a Cause or whatever. His daughter's a writer, Nika Ray, and she wrote this great piece. And she said that when she had been hurt like that as a child, she had an easy bake oven. Her grandmother used to bake, and so she had an easy bake oven that kids would have. And her mother used to smoke, and she used to smoke. She would pretend to be smoking and using the easy bake oven. And so the person that hurt her, she basically had put it where they hurt someone that was they didn't have a sense of self. She was still her grandmother and her mother. She was not yet herself, which I thought was a really interesting way to basically separate yourself from the abuse.
Dissociation, I think, is...
Exactly. To disassociate. And the same thing, the first novel I wrote, American Demon, It's written outside of myself. It's written from this demon perspective that basically it's a trick of disassociation. It pulls me back, allows me to basically lay it out, to tell the truth as I saw it, to not worry about looking bad, being hurt, whatever, because it's not me. It's not me. And in the same way, playing in a band, I did the same thing. This guy on stage just isn't me. It's not me. When I stopped drinking and had to get back on stage, it was terrible. It was terrible. It was so uncomfortable because I'm a nerd, man. I'm just I'd rather sit around the house and read. Normally, even when we play shows, people always go, well, where's Jack? Well, he's in the car reading. We get him 5 minutes before we're supposed to go on, or whatever the hell. And when I first played a show sober, I was so uncomfortable because I'm exposed. And, later on, it was I was able to re-dig up how it felt before going on. And I was able to separate myself and be that guy on stage versus the guy off stage, who a lot of people think I'm this real extroverted cat, and I'm not. I'm completely the opposite of it. I lead a small couple of friends life.
I'm the same way. I do this and I can talk to strangers, but I can't. My thing is if I go to a party and don't know anybody, I'm just going to sit off in the corner because for whatever reason, I just can't one-on-one. You obviously don't have the same exact problem, but I have difficulty engaging in that setting for some reason. And it's really hard for my brain to reconcile these things.
Well, that's funny because when I walk into a party, I'm playing a part. I'm a big fan of early science fiction, Heinlein, Asimov, Bradbury, Kuttner, Ellison. I love that stuff. And there
Astoundings,
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I got a bunch of Astoundings in the bookcase. Anyway, there was a great story about this guy who walks into a bar and he's like 6'3" and he's big and he's loud and he comes in and the whole room lights up. And they're all like, the girls are coming by him and the guys are glad handing him and he gets a drink. Mike, the bartender, everybody's stoked and the whole room's alive. And he says, and now I'd like you to meet my handler. And he stops and he freezes and a door in the back of him opens up and this little guy crawls out of the back and he's not attractive and he's not this and he's not everything. And he gets out and gets a drink. And when he comes out of the back, the whole room quiets back down. Everybody goes about their business. He's ignored. He gets up and gets a drink. And finally, the bartender says, hey, Johnny, why don't you get back inside? And he jumps back inside the big man, and the big man comes to life, and the room comes to life. So, when I walk in a room, I walk in as the big man. Hey, how you doing? Hey, all right. Good to see you. I'm this. But in reality, I'm not. I'm the handler. The little body inside. Since
this is an audio podcast, I should say you're not holding a cigar right now, and I wonder how tied the cigar is to the big man.
Well, I can't smoke in the office.
Sure, but even holding a cigar, but I feel like that's part of the character, is it not?
Right. A little bit. Yeah, exactly. I do smoke cigars. I smoke. It's funny. Sometimes if I'm in the middle of something, really working on something, I'll burn a shitload of incense in here and then I'll fire up and take a couple of puffs, because they can't really smell it. You burn the sage. They think you're burning sage in here. But, yeah, it's part of it. It's, hey, here I am. Hey, and not at the end, very withdrawal, very, very sucked up, very small. I used to see myself as 5'3", 113 pounds, and I'm 6'4", 300. But I would see myself as this small figure constantly. I remember I had a mentor tell me, look, man, you're a big man. When you come in, you fill the doorway when you walk in. You can't throw that weight around. You have to, be aware of that. That was something I had to be aware of. That I could come in and be overpowering, too, and I had to watch out for that. Be quiet. And then Jennifer Finch from L7 just said something to me that was pretty interesting. I learned another new character defect of mine. I was at a reading. I was supposed to do a reading, and I didn't really know. Am I supposed to go backstage? Am I not? I'm not sure where to be. I don't know what's going on. And somebody said to me, somebody said, "Well, you were supposed to be backstage." I go, well, I didn't know where it was. I didn't know what's happening. And then that person walked away, and Jennifer Finch said to me, she said, "I play dumb too sometimes." And I thought, oh my God, how many times have I done that? Play dumb. I don't know, play the victim, the small victim, the dumb boy, the whatever the hell.